In this session, we will have various takeaways from the cybersecurity consultants, cyber lawmakers, and the influencers in the industry. Now, I would welcome Mr. Sandeep Sen Gupta, CEO, ISOAH, Dr. Karnika Seth, founder, Seth Associates, Mr. Anuj Agarwal, Chairman, Cybertech DigiVenture, Dr. Harold DeCosta, President, Cybersecurity Corporation, Mr. Harnath Babu, CIO, KPMG India, Mr. Shushonan Mukherjee, founder, Prime InfoServe. This session will be moderated by Dr. Deepak Kumar Sahu, Chief Editor of VAR India.
So let me start and tell about the theme of the panel discussion session, how the cyber criminals are adopting cyber attack techniques for their targeted end users. Let me introduce how and why we have selected the theme. Cyber intrusions and attacks have increased dramatically over last year, exposing sensitive personal and business information, disrupting critical operations, and imposing high cost on the economy. Malware is the primary choice of weapon to carry out malicious intents and output, either by exploitation into existing vulnerabilities or utilization of unique characteristics of emerging technologies. Cyber attacks have gone up manyfold, and every day 4 lakh pieces of malware are found and 375 cyber attacks are witnessed. India was among the world's top 5 cyber targeted nations along with US, UK, Singapore and Ukraine, wherein it held the top position for 3 months. The world is now facing what seems to be the 5th generation cyber attack, a sophisticated multi-vector attack with clear characteristics of the cyber pandemic. Recently, we have seen one of the most sophisticated and severe attacks ever seen. We have heard many cases where the cyber criminals are shutting down the IT infrastructure of critical establishments, and even they can make the banking system under paralysis. On this backdrop, let me introduce our panelists, Mr. Sandeep Sen Gupta and Dr. Karnika Seth, Mr. Anuj Agrawal, Dr. Harold DeCosta, Mr. Harnath Babu, and Mr. Shushohan Mukherjee. Let's start with from my first question. Whom are the corporate fighting against? Different types of hackers with different skills and motives. Let me start with Karnika. And we have to, our timing, we will keep it for maximum 2 to 3 minutes for these things. Can you start with Karnika?
Sure, Deepakji, thank you so much for creating this forum. And I think it's a wonderful, interaction, the way we are interacting today, spreading knowledge, sharing with each other. And this is a pertinent topic indeed. I'm glad to be on the panel and good afternoon to all the colleagues today. I hope we will have meaningful outcomes from this discussion. How I perceive this particular, topic, the way, what kind of hackers are there, and what is the kind of, scenario which is prevalent today. Well, I think corporates really need to be worried about the kind of hackers. You can actually segregate into various quarters. One, I know from experience that one are definitely the third party hackers, the people who are outside their system, their organization. And you would have also come across so many of these kind of hacking attacks, whether it's ransomware or whether it is malware, or it is man in the middle attacks. There are all kinds of financial frauds happening today using phishing, wishing, smishing, social engineering attacks, and whether it's through social media or otherwise, network hackers. Then also there is another category altogether, which is insider frauds. So the corporates are also worried increasingly about people who actually handle and who own their sensitive information in some sense, because they are the ones who are actually handling it every day. So mechanisms like DLP, data loss prevention, and software which will basically see the footprints of what kind of data access is being given to what kind of employees, and how they can monitor this is becoming a huge concern, especially in today's digital times when so much of work is online, and including your data and how you're storing and how you're accessing it for work reasons. So that becomes a second, kind of, I would say, category, which is always a threat, and organizations are revamping their, facilities, infrastructure, even technical, legal policy measures being deployed for this reason. Then there could be, third set of, organizations would be worried about third set of hackers, which would have, specifically those organizations which are maybe in the public sector or government related, where critical infrastructure is related, protected systems of the country, power grids, and things which rely on AI, things which rely on, I would say, a lot of infrastructure which is dependent on automated systems, where either terrorists could create a havoc by I would say, accessing these and misusing the data which is contained in them, which could be official secrets, it could be any kind of confidential data, because today data is huge, and the data is the new oil. So we are worried about cyber security, not just from the point of view of how we protect non-personal data of people, which could be of businesses, their vendor list, their consumer list, their contact list, but also their, data of their citizens, the people who they are maybe, taking data off, like personal information, which could be health related, or other information which may even be sensitive. So financial payment systems data. Those are the kind of issues which corporates are really worried about, and the kind of hackers which they are worried about. So I think in all, even these smart gadgets which we are using, whether it's a fridge or it's a AC today, so much of snooping is occurring, and we are scared about these gadgets, because what kind of data they're listening, even in our houses, the music systems we are using are smart devices, IoT based devices. Those are the fourth category of hackers we are worried about, because they are misusing emerging technologies. So it's not just non-personal data, personal data, or sensitive data, company data. It's not just those hackers who are against maybe something, working for terrorist groups using botnets. There are also insiders. There are also people who are committing financial frauds. All these categories of threats, I would say, I put them into different buckets, and that's how I view the cybersecurity landscape today, and how privacy or even personal data or non-personal data is at threat. So corporates need to be worried on all fronts: legal, technical, and cyberspace in general.
Good, good. Thank you, Karnika. Now we'll understand from Anuj. How Anuj we want to say? Anuj.
In terms of the corporate, the threat is from inside and outside, mostly from outside. And the risk is that most of the management people are not involving themselves directly into the cyber security, and they are leaving their IT people. Maybe a difficult situation, because these people are good at delivering IT solutions, but cyber security is a totally different ball game. And if you look at RBI's mandate, for example, to the financial sector, in all their mandates on the cyber security, they have very clearly in their circulars mentioned that it would be the responsibility of the board, that cyber security is their responsibility, and they will have to file adequate reports to RBI for the compliance of cyber security measures. So the risk is that people are not taking it seriously. The senior management is not taking it seriously, and the IT people who are being given this responsibility are obviously not at all trained, educated, equipped, and obviously budget is always an issue. So that is where the major threats are happening. Second, obviously the training is a major problem, because 67% of the incidents are because of the employees. It does not mean that all the incidents which are happening with the employees are malicious in nature. Most of them are actually because of lack of any kind of understanding and knowledge on the cyber security for the employees. So every management, be it private sector, public sector, has to invest more time, effort, and money on training and making people aware about these risks. So these are the two main issues before the managements. I think if they take care, the cybersecurity will be much better in this country.
Good, wonderful. Thanks. We'll understand from Harold DaCosta. Harold DaCosta.
Yeah, thanks, Deepak. Good evening, everybody. See, when you're talking about the corporate, what comes into my mind is basically the two type of hackers. As Anuj also said sometime before, is the out for me. I feel that till the time there is the inside hacker, if he doesn't provide the information to an outside entity, then there will be a very less element of any unauthorized access or hacking taking place. In fact, just today morning, I came from an investigation, and a bank server was compromised. A cooperative bank server was compromised. And during the investigation, it was revealed that there was some set of people who were working in this organization who left in the last 3 months. And these were the actual people, I would say the hackers, who provided the information to an outside entity and had this fraud to be taken place. So for me, I feel that there's a sheer negligence, intentional negligence, if I add for that part. And when you talk about the outside hackers, well, the outside hackers can commit any attack, say as disrupting your system, ransomware attack, by modifying the path of your folders, files, encryption, so on and so forth. But then the basic element of where a corporate has a problem is with a person who is sitting inside the organization who provides this information to an outside entity for a crime to be taken place. Well, when you talk about the different types of hackers, well, we have ethical hackers, we have white hackers, gray hackers, so on and so forth. But for me, all of these comes with a pinch of salt. And why with a pinch of salt? Because the roles and responsibilities are not exactly defined what exactly they have to do. And if these roles and responsibilities are been defined with such type of a people who could be good also, all hackers need not be bad. But if the roles and responsibilities have been properly defined, then I'm sure that the organization or the corporate shall not have any major breach of a cyber attack, and things can be brought into under control.
Good. Thanks, Harold. And now we'll understand from Sandeep Sengupta.
Yeah, good evening to all my colleagues and viewers. I would like to add few things. Since I audit a lot of companies, including the PSU, right from the big four companies to banks, what I have seen that apart from inside, outside, lack of awareness, the most important point I think has been brought into attention is lack of awareness. This lack of awareness starts from the top management, because if you go and speak to them, you will understand that they, with the rapid change in technology, most of the top management are clueless where is the risk and what should ideally be the control. Most of the time they either overspend on things which is not needed, and they undercut the budget in things which are needed. So this part has to be very, very critical, because every security drive has to be a top driven. And if top management is rudderless, then down the line, everybody is clueless what exactly to be done. So this part has to be addressed. Apart from the grey hat, state-sponsored terrorists from across the border, from the Jamtara gang to different types of hackers, one more new type of hackers I can see, which may not be termed an illegal hacker, but becoming a big problem for the companies, which are bug bounty hunters. Now, there is a very thin line of difference between what is bug bounty and what becomes a blackmail. Because I have seen a lot of people who call themselves bug bounty hunters, and they start blackmailing companies. Either you give a certificate or some money or some acknowledgement, and that becomes a big problem for small companies, SME, medium companies. I haven't even seen banks which has actually fallen victim to bug bounty hunters, and it has a legal tussle between what is right, what is wrong. So these again is becoming a big problem. But if the corporate do a proper risk identification, that is the biggest loophole, risk identification right from the top management, giving the right awareness and find a proper process oriented risk management and identifying controls, then a lot of problem can get solved. If you think from the country point of view, the PSU, power grid, power utility, stock market, bank, these are the biggest vulnerable point, because we know that they are still using a lot of backdated technologies. So if there is a war breaking out, then we will be in serious trouble if this is not taken the case, because small time hackers, Jamtara gang, they cannot do much damage. But the power sector, if that becomes a victim, then it's a national security issue. Thank you. Over to you.
Okay. Mr. Harnath? Harnath?
He's on
Yeah, okay. Deepak, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Thanks, Deepak. I think it's an interesting question and certainly a good start of the discussion. So I think from a corporate's point of view, if you want to just take a step back and understand what's happening at the corporate side, so cybersecurity is becoming one of the top concerns in most of the organizations. I think it has moved from the CIO and CISA agenda to the board agenda now, especially after the last pandemic and many of the events that we have seen or incidents that we have seen. I think certainly the eyes have opened, or at least the awareness obviously has gone up in comparison to the earlier years, right? Another thing that we have seen is because of the rise of digital enterprises, where organizations are constantly working in creating digital customer experience, or applying sophisticated data analytics, or investing in new technologies. So cybersecurity is becoming more important because you're dealing with data, and certainly this data could be of any nature, right? And it's important to have a very high governance in terms of managing this data and security related to this data. So what are the challenges that we are seeing because of because of the cybersecurity issues, primarily in most of the organizations? One is obviously with the increased usage of AI and ML. I think while AI and ML is helping organizations to create a new digital business model, but is actually also creating in parallel a new dimension around cybersecurity threats, right? I think it's being used effectively for creating new cybersecurity issues or threats, right, for most of the organizations. I think second thing, as the other panelists have just mentioned, is the biggest technical skill gap that we are seeing in most of the organizations. I think there's a growing community of hackers. Some of them are hobbies, some of them are are doing for various reasons. But the set of people who are on the other side trying to prevent it, I think that itself is not scaling at the same pace, right? According to one of the survey, I think more than 3 million unfilled cybersecurity jobs are going to be there. So which means that the organizations or corporates will have a bit of a struggle in terms of getting the right kind of skill sets to manage the cybersecurity threats. Third thing that we have seen is because the higher adoption of cloud in the recent past, the awareness around securing the cloud infrastructure is again very low. So many of the organizations, or many of the people who are actually putting their data on the cloud, are thinking that it's the responsibility of the cloud service provider, which may not be the fact, right? I think people have to also own the security aspects of the data which is being put on the cloud, right? The fourth thing that we have seen is the whole gamut of social engineering attacks, right, around phishing, wishing, and the amount of data that is available in the organizations today. So obviously the weakest link, as we spoke earlier, is the employee himself or herself, right? So I think if you're able to push a malware or make the right number of calls to an employee to pull the information out, people are falling prey to it. So who is actually doing all of this, right? I think there are a lot of people who are constantly working, and as some of the other colleagues have just mentioned, so some of these guys could be a bank robber, right? The intentions and the motives could be completely different. So one is obviously the person who's purely focusing on stealing the money from institutions and corporates, as well as people who are actually the actual customers of banks, and I would say stock. They could be stealing from stock accounts and things like that. Second thing that we have recently seen an example of nation state attack, which is the SolarWinds Orion attack, right? I think it was purely a targeted attack to put your backdoor, create a backdoor and start stealing, stealing the information from companies. Third thing that we have seen is corporate spies. Typically, you would have people getting into the organization trying to steal the business strategy. And again, with the advancement of technology, I think the more opportunities you're creating, I think you're equally making it vulnerable from a data security perspective. We have more, I would say, a type of hackers who could. I think the colleagues have already spoken about it, but certainly, I would say the botnet masters, what we call. These guys have been, launching DDoS attacks, right, just to bring down the services and some of the, I would say, digital enabled businesses. So I think, as I mentioned, I think there's a great, I would say, breadth in terms of the way organizations are, adopting digital, but somewhere it's also falling prey to the cybersecurity challenges if it's not really protecting it, if it's not there as a part of the agenda of protection, right? I think that's how things are moving in organizations today.
Thank you. And we'll understand from Mr. Mukherjee.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deepak, and good evening to all my fellow panelists. So in these circumstances, many of our co-panelists already talked about many things. So I will try to harp upon three major points, which was important in many time, but post-pandemic it is becoming more prevalent. So one aspect is at this moment, cybersecurity elements cannot be treated in silos. Like there are ransomware kind of things. So people are thinking I'm putting some endpoint, I'm putting some perimeter firewall, and I'm deploying certain devices will solve my problem. It is not, because as you are already seeing, we are talking about multi-vector attacks, signatureless attacks. So cybersecurity has to be treated as a fabric. Suppose if we talk about ransomware, so only an endpoint, only a gateway firewall will not solve my purpose. So endpoint security, gateway firewall, next generation firewall, web application firewall, sandboxing, mail security, all those things put together, it becomes a fabric. Then only we can handle ransomware and this kind of threats holistically. So that is one point. Cybersecurity has to be treated in a harmony, in the orchestration mode, not in silos. Second point will be interesting point. Across the globe, always any enterprise are trying to prevent the attack. But attack cannot be prevented. If you are trying to protect the thief from certain door, he will come from the other door. If you have seen many breaches across the globe, starting from Equifax to Sony, many of the things you might have seen, the moment the attack has happened, still there was time. Through that time, if they would have the incident response plan, they could have prevented the breach. So generally, it has been seen that this is called dwell time from the attack to the breach, which is around say 200 plus kind of days. If we have a proactive incident response kind of a plan, even after the attack arises in my landscape, I can still prevent the data breaches. So that is the second point I'm trying to harp. And the third point, most important point, which is becoming more important post-pandemic, because pandemic situation and the lockdown and those situations came to us in very suddenly. So there was less of a preparation. So this situation had become a little different, where home has become our new office, where users are working in a hybrid mode. There are users earlier used to sit in office. He used to access certain application inside his data center or maybe in the cloud, passing his perimeter firewall. Now, moment he is working from office, he is connecting his server, connecting over VPN to landing to his landscape, or maybe he is directly reaching to the cloud. So he is able to reach from any source to any destination. So I am not able to create a boundary from a definite kind of a source, he will reach to a definite destination. So typically this is called as a zero trust kind of a framework, where even after user is allowed, I need to see certain privileges, some access restrictions, some identity management. So zero trust kind of a security, since users can come from anywhere. He can come from the home, he can come from BYD kind of a device, he can come from office, he can come from anywhere and he can access anywhere. So this kind of situation, zero trust kind of security is also becoming very pertinent. So these are the 3 points I wanted to highlight.
Wonderful, wonderful, Mr. Mukherjee, you thought of. Now you understood who are the hackers and where it comes. Now on this backdrop, we want to understand more from the panel. What should be the defense strategy? People, process and technology. We'll understand from Mr. Harnath Babu.
Deepak, I think another interesting question, and certainly I think organizations have been, obviously thinking of cybersecurity of it is more like tools and technologies, right? I think nothing beyond that. I think it's more of a mindset, and I would say it has to be changed from only tools and technology to people, process, and technology, right? I think coming to people, as we just spoke, they're the weakest link in cybersecurity. We've spoken about insider threats, outsider threats, and insider threats obviously is one of the major concerns in most of the organization. And I was mentioning earlier, social engineering is very prevalent in in these times, because you have any new event that is happening. There's a COVID vaccine coming in, you will have phishing attacks. There's there's any kind of event that is happening which is very socially I would say visible. I think there's a phishing attack around it, and people fall prey to it, right? I think what's important is to make your employees understand these risks. You have to train your people, make sure that there is enough information that is passed on to them, and they are aware of what sort of risks are there that typically come in during different types of times of these sorts, right? Second is you also have to create very creative communications, that people understand. See, not everybody can understand cybersecurity very easily, right? You have to make them understand the way these attacks can happen. You have to simulate attacks and see what is the and possibly assess the vulnerabilities that are there in the organization, be it from a people or a technology point of view, right? And you have to make sure that you also monitor the high risk users, right? So typically, not every user could be as important, but especially from a, let's say, from a leadership point of view, or from these people who could be carrying information which is very particular for an organization, very important for an organization. I think those sort of users have to be necessarily monitored. Second is on the process side, which is typically you have to constantly invest in threat hunting, threat research, to make sure that you are constantly on the move from a cybersecurity perspective. You have to and not every time an organization could be lucky to prevent a cyber attack, or protect itself from a cyber attack. I think it's important to create resilient infrastructure. Resiliency has to be there in the design of the organization, to make sure that if something happens, you are able to respond back from a process point of view. There has to be a very strong incident response management system. You have to have the right disaster recovery capabilities to make sure that you are able to come back as quickly as possible, because the information has to be made available, the processes have to run, the technology has to run. The customers obviously cannot be going away from you. And also, I think one of the critical aspects most people tend to ignore is the third-party risks, right? I think that's again one of the key aspects most of the organizations have to look at from a cybersecurity perspective. And the last but not the least is the technology piece, where I think the colleagues have spoken about, where you have to get the best technology in place, because when the hackers are deploying the best technology to hack you, you also have to put the best technology to prevent it, right? So it could be patch management, it could be setting up your own VPN, or you could have your advanced threat protection or advanced persistent threats technologies. You may have to get real-time alerts, possibly through a SOC, deploy DLP, right? I think one thing which is important also is most of the corporates, while are running for digital transformation in the digital journey, you are actually ending up creating shadow ITs. I think that also brings a lot of risk to the organizations. I think that's important to arrest as we start looking at some of the challenges of cybersecurity. So I think I would say if you are able to take care of these three aspects and the points that I mentioned, I think you're more or less covered from a cybersecurity perspective.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now we'll understand from Sandeep Sengupta. Sandeep, we cannot hear you. Sandeep.
Yes, I think now we can hear.
Yes.
So in the PPT model, the people process technology, most of the time in India, at least in India and few times abroad when we spoke to the top management and the decision making people, what I've seen, the people's approach is always technology process people. So it's not PPT, it is always TPP. That attitude has to change, because when you go to somebody and you ask what have you done for security, uh, always we get the answer that I have installed an antivirus, a firewall, IDS, IPS, SOC, SIEM. But technology is basically the like a goalkeeper. People is like a defender. So if you don't have a football match, a defender, and you have only a lot of goalkeepers, you are bound to get, consume few goals. So the most neglected part, that is the people part, you have a control for that, that is awareness, and you also have an audit for that, that is anti-phishing simulation. You have social engineering audit. Only the top level companies are doing this audit. Not everybody is doing this audit. So if you go for a social engineering audit, that can actually find out the awareness level of the people. That is very few companies are doing. Second point, we always have a defensive way of handling security. That is incorrect. We must have an offensive way of handling security. What exactly is that is I meant by this? In a big company, you have a red team, you have a blue team. So there are two different teams. What you need to do, the red team was always trying to find out gaps within the company, while the blue team is trying to rectify the problem. Most of the small and medium-sized company, you have only a single team. You ask them to find the problem, and then you burden them in finding a solution to that problem. Immediately, they stop finding the problem. So if you have a red team and blue team where you don't give, you have an independent segregation of the duty, that red team only find problem and they are awarded for that, and the blue team solve the problem, then that company will find the problem faster than a hacker finds the problem or some external threat is identified. They will identify it much faster. So I believe these are the two ways they can improve, and there are many other ways, but time is limited. So I will stick
Yes.
to these 2 points and we can move on.
Okay. I will now understand from Dr. Karnika Seth.
Yes, I have a certain point to make here, because I know we are all from the technical as well as cybersecurity area. But coming from a legal fraternity, from my past experience by advising corporates and representing them before courts of law, I have flagged at least three issues which I want to just briefly discuss. One is a number of times, we fail to realize that the harmless relationships that the corporates are entering into, for example, engaging with a cyber, like a website to be created by a service provider, or an app to be created which has important information, of the company for internal use or otherwise, maybe. Later on, what happens is the contracts which are made with these service providers are not airtight, and because of that there's a huge threat, because tomorrow the source code will not be given back by the service provider, and he will start owning, he'll say that I own the source code in this. Then who's at stake? I mean, whose entire work effort put in and the monetary resources put in, plus time goes waste. So in that regard, I mean, it's very important to create airtight contracts where, just like zero trust, infrastructure, we say, or architecture in the cybersecurity domain, similarly, airtight contracts are equally important to my mind. Also, a number of times, because of the gaps in the IT policy of a company, because of the gaps in a social media policy of a company, or the IPR policy, intellectual property rights policy of a company suffers a lot, because there are gaps, and the employees later on, as ex-employees or service providers, may claim rights over such assets which actually belong to the company. And it may be difficult to prove otherwise, because the Copyright Act for example, has provisions where if there is a ambiguity and a service provider has been engaged for a particular contract, unless the contract specifies otherwise, the ownership could be claimed by the service provider on that IP asset. So it's very important to create a good airtight policy, even internally with employees, how they will be sending any information belonging to the company or its work, whether any personal email IDs could be used or otherwise, which is very basic. But even in the biggest of corporations I've advised so far, I have seen these lacunas. And I am saying that from experience that the vigilance, for example, the CCTVs which have been put in, whether there's a policy which is clearly declaratory, because tomorrow any defamation action could be lodged against one of the company's directors for having put any of these, in like CCTV vigilance or other softwares without the permission of the employee, and he could even or she could even say that this is an invasion of the privacy right. So on the basis of or on the ground of productivity, or to monitor productivity of what the employees are doing at that particular point of time, installing softwares within their systems without their knowledge, or even CCTVs to some extent in certain areas may be something which is probably fall foul of law, unless the contracts or the policies specify very clearly that this kind of monitoring is ongoing. So it's very important to flag these. A lot of sexual harassment claims, a lot of defamation actions on companies or directors could even come into the picture. So in order to avoid these problems, not only we have to be creating a foolproof technology and infrastructure for safeguarding data of clients plus the company or the directors, but also equally important is the legal framework. So having said that, I just want to underline the relevance and the importance of this aspect in today's discussion, because when we are safeguarding a company or a corporate, I think both are equally important. That's what I wanted to share. You're on mute.
Yeah, Anuj Agrawal. Anuj.
Yes. Yeah, I think what is happening that a lot of people are putting a lot of technology, especially those who are interested in the cyber security. They are putting a lot of tools, but what is missing is that there is no monitoring. So the budget is for buying technology. Yes, they are buying X, Y, Z, A, B, C, all sorts of technologies, endpoint security, firewall, this, that. But what is missing is an active monitoring of the activity. So if you look at some of the big hacks which were reported in last few years, it is not that those companies were not having good amount of money spent on technologies, or they were not aware about threats and they have not put some money into technology. But what has happened that there was nobody actively taking care of the alerts being issued or patterns being there that they are under attack. So that is what is happening, is one of the biggest problem. Whether it is the recent threats, recent problems with the banks, Bangladesh or Pune or wherever, that nobody is really taking care of the alerts being issued. The technology deployment is done, budget is consumed, everybody is happy, vendor goes home, the CISO gets award, and that's all. Because doing a routine check on what is happening is a very boring kind of a job, which is often given to the trainees, and no one really takes active interest at the senior level. So I think that is one of the biggest problem in this entire system. If that is taken care, probably cyber security again will improve quite a bit.
Okay, wonderful. So now we'll understand more from Mr. Mukherjee.
Yeah, thank you. So as we have already discussed, like out of PPT, technology is always getting priority. We are already giving less importance to people. We are not considering to uplift human firewall. So I will try to harp little bit on process also, because it has been observed process is also it is taken as kind of a compliance. So I need to submit certain kind of tenders. I need to put something in my website. So somehow in getting certain kind of certifications to comply certain kind of tender, it is kind of mindset. It has been found not only in India, elsewhere also. So somehow we are not able to give importance to the process. Like as we are already talking about ISO 27000, we are talking about business continuity, risk management. There are many different kind of standards. If we can really implement that, it can give me immense business benefit. But many of us, we are not able to understand that. And in lieu of that, we are trying to get it on a compliance. So in that context, you can see, even in globally GDPR once has been formed, there is also a penalty clause. Unless there is some penalty, no one is doing that. In India also, if you can see the regulators, like the DOT tried, they are saying 27,000 is very important for the ISPs, that they are saying since 2011. SEBI is saying system audit, cyber resilience audit are very important for the trading houses. RBI is saying red teaming, blue teaming exercises are mandatory. But unless the enforcement, there is a penalty clause, there is very less adoption and the enforcement of those kind of policies and kind of compliances. So the point I'm trying to make is, like, as we are saying, people awareness, human firewall uplifting is not happening. We are not able to enforce, not able to adopt processes also properly in our enterprise architecture, so that I can get the actual business benefit.
Okay, good, Mr. Mukherjee. And now we'll understand from Dr. DeCosta.
Yeah, I think, I was listening to the panel members, and then
we cannot
just
see
a couple of,
I cannot see your picture.
yeah, just a couple of points I just want to add up into this is, I think the defense strategy first is definitely on the people, because they are the weakest link. But when we talk about the people, awareness is a must, of course, with the budget. Most of the time, it's also been observed that the budget is not at all correlated with what technology is required by the organization. So I think the budget and the people have to be coincided together. That's the best defense strategy, I would feel. The second is the process. When you have the process, we talk about VAPT, we talk about cyber policy guidelines, the ISMS, but how many of them are really implemented and put in place is that's a question mark. To give you one example is that every 3 months, RBI says to all the banks that you have to give me what type of a compliance you followed, depending upon the rules and regulations given to them. And every 3 months, the banks, what they do is that they just fill up a customary form and they send to RBI. And how many of these actual processes are being checked by the nodal agency to find out whether these are actually implemented? So I think the second part, the process, when you talk about VAPT or the cyber policy guidelines or the ISMS, all of these technical jargons, unless and until they're actually put into place. And the last but not the least for me comes is technology. Because if your process is in place and if your people are being educated to handle what type of the responsibilities or the threats they have, responsibility and ownership is very, very important. So once these factors are put into place, then the last thing comes is technology. Well, undefinedly, I would like to say that we focus more on technology. We believe that we have got the best firewall, the best of the IDS or the IPS in place. But what about its use when it is not configured according to the law of the land? So overall, I would say, first, the people have to be educated in the organization. There should be awareness. There should be a budget which should be allocated, which should be properly monitored. The second part should be the process. The process which is there, which is theoretical on piece of a paper, should be implemented. And last for me comes the technology, which by and far we normally give it the first priority in any organization.
Good, wonderful. So now, with the introduction of newest technologies, who are the prime target? Now we'll ask, start from Karnika.
Well, who are the prime targets?
With the introduction of newest technologies.
Yes, emerging technologies. We have a clear example of what's happened with WhatsApp controversy. The latest changes in privacy policy that they have proposed has been a matter of debate. And it's just one of the instances, but there is a lot which is, at stake today, especially in terms of data. Government is also working on having non-personal data regulated. So how the particular data will be kept, where would that be, whether it will be localized data, delocalized data, what kind of segregation of data would be, kept is something which is being hugely debated and largely debated at this point of time. So who is at risk? Obviously, the common person, the citizen of India. I mean, if you look at this sort of a example, then each of us is concerned with privacy rights and data protection today. From the corporate's point of view, obviously, it is the corporate's data, which is confidential data, proprietary data, IP assets of the company, whether this is a source code or it is something which is an invention, or it is anything to do with a design right. It could be anything which is a trade secret. You can actually have various kinds of data today. So therefore, the risk is of the client whose data they may have with them. The risk is of the corporation. The risk is also of the directors, because they are ultimately answerable to what is going on in the organization. The risk is also of the nation, because there could be sensitive data of the nation which is involved, and the infrastructure PSUs could be targeted. So the endpoint, there could be damage to property, there could be damage to a person, there could be damage in terms of intangible data, and infrastructure also, which is holding this data. So there is a multi-fold level. It's like a prism. It's a multi-fold, a pyramid. How we could actually say who is the target segment. Employees themselves could also be targeted. So it's a huge layer after layer, just like an onion. We call it as onion routing. There could be something like you peel the layers of the onion, something like that. It's actually going like ripples in the water. It's actually segregated and it's profiled. That's the kind of risk that we see: risk to government, risk to people, risk to data. That's how I see it. But I just want to also say one thing. While we are discussing everything else here, whether it's technology or it's legal or other threats which we are talking about, or people process technology, what we cannot afford to ignore right now is electronic evidence. Because after all, whatever redressal has to be done, or whatever audit or investigation has to be done, it is going to be having a footprint, and that electronic evidence becomes very crucial. So how the companies keep their electronic evidences is also a very important aspect of getting any kind of remedies. If God forbid something happens, there is always a resilience, there's a backup measure, there is a backup of data. What happens to electronic evidence? Because the moment you tamper it a bit, it's lost its authenticity. So companies have to now start to invest in time, in resources, also in managing their resources and electronic evidence and footprints of whatever activity is going on in their organizations. Because if they fail to do that, there is deemed liability of directors, and that's a huge concern.
You're right. So now we'll understand more from Sandeep Sengupta.
See, if you talk about who is most vulnerable, I would say that tech startups are the most vulnerable.
Wow.
Now, if you tell me what is the ROI, return on investment in attacking a tech startup, itself, it is not very good ROI. If not, that tech startup is a vendor for a very critical national infrastructure, because there are a lot of national infrastructure, critical infrastructure, which also employs this type of tech startup, especially when you talk about make in India. So if these tech startups are not protected and we go into a make in India drive, they can be an indirect backdoor for bringing a big problem in our national security. So I think that has to be addressed before, this tech startups has to be protected, educated. They has to be nurtured because they are good in technology. They may not be good in security. In that case only, we can go for a full-fledged Make in India drive and still say that India is not only doing something within India, but it is also secured and will keep the citizens safe. What is?
Okay, good. So now we'll understand in detail from Harnath Babu. Harnath.
Deepak, I think the prime targets are, I think, as Karnika and Subhashil both mentioned, I think it's all digital businesses, right? So I think we've just discussed about how organizations are moving towards complete digital transformation, and the digital footprint is increasing in every organization. Certainly, any organization which is constantly, utilizing digital as its key business models or digital as an enabler, and also is hosting a lot of data, obviously is a prime target to start with. As Kanika just mentioned about the recent privacy related discussions around WhatsApp, I think it's not new, right? I think the whole Facebook, data privacy challenges, or any of the social media platforms which are basically collecting information from common individuals. I think all that is obviously at risk. So these also can also potentially be a prime target for the hackers. Third could be any financial institution which could be an interest for any what I was referring to as bank robbers, right? So people who want to kind of steal money. Certainly, I think those can also be the targets for the hackers. What we have recently seen is the whole startup community, which obviously has now become very big, the whole healthcare, e-commerce. I think these companies have really created a great business model, collecting a lot of information from clients or customers, but hosting all that on the all that on the cloud, which may mean that if not secure practices followed, you are potentially falling prey to cybersecurity threats. One of the recent examples that we've seen of one of the payment gateways, right? I think it lost millions of credit card information and it was available on the dark web. So one small error by an administrator can potentially lead to larger threats, right, from a customer data perspective. And I think one of the colleagues was mentioning earlier, any issues related to, or let's say any target around energy and utility or telecom sector can potentially also bring down the whole, infrastructure itself. So I think the list is endless to my mind. I think these days the way electricity was considered as some time back as the as given, I think internet is and the data is being considered as given, right? I think if you're not able to protect it, obviously you're having a challenge. And what are the challenges that we are seeing, in most of the organizations? What are the risks that we are seeing because of these emerging technologies? One is obviously we are seeing a lot of data breaches that are there because of the massive amount of data in most of the organizations or the businesses that are hosting this data. I mentioned about user privacy, which is again a critical concern. Third thing is what we have often seen is many of the customer-facing organizations are, especially during the COVID pandemic, had switched on to chatbots, right, for customer service. And to counter that, hackers have come out with spoofed chatbots, right, collecting a lot of information from people who are trying to, get some services out of these chatbots. And I would say, last but not the least, is the whole adoption of cloud that has really gone high in last couple of years because of various reasons, right? I think the people are not really aware, as I was mentioning earlier, about the challenges of cloud. If you're not really taking care of the cloud infrastructure, if you're not really owning the data on the cloud and taking care of the security aspects on the cloud, I think you will fall prey to cybersecurity attacks. I think to my mind, I would say prime targets are, the list is endless, and obviously the risks, obviously I've just mentioned. So I think
anyone.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, now we'll understand from Anuj Agrawal. Anuj.
हाँ जी सर, क्वेश्चन फिर से रिपीट करिए.
Okay, with the introduction of newest technologies, who are the prime target?
You mean to say the technology introduced to the hackers?
Yep.
Obviously, somebody who has got money would be the target. You see, the typical mentality of a criminal is 95% times they are after money, and 5% times the matter is something to do with the social. So wherever the money is, the criminals will follow. Now the value is in the data and the value in the business which are driven by data. So any business which has high IP, intellectual property, a business which is doing very good, especially even during tough times, for example, healthcare. So today, healthcare is the prime target for all sorts of hackers, cyber criminals, because despite pandemic and all that, this sector is obviously doing good because they are catering to the audience during that time. Food is obviously a choice of hackers because although it is a stale kind of a business, not a high growth business, but this is a business which is resilient to pandemic kind of scenarios. So using the newer technologies, the hackers are now picking and choosing beyond sectors which were earlier being targeted, for example, BFSI. So BFSI is always a target, but now health and food is a prime target for the time being. And these new tools which people are acquiring every day and night, and with the help of these digital so-called digital currencies, Bitcoin, etc., the ransomware kind of a scenario is much more prevalent because it is allowing them to not steal data, just encrypt it there and get money, and then everything looks as if nothing happened. So it is much less risky because most of the time a Bitcoin kind of a scenario, the investigators are really hampered in finding out the sources. So that's one good place where the cyber criminals are playing.
Good, 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 nice input. Now I'll understand from Dr. DeCosta.
Yeah, I think when I talk about the prime targets, well, there are two types of people. But of course, the first target is the people only. There are almost about 97% of the people who are made targets by the 3% of the people who misuse technology. So I think the prime target, according to me, are the people. But if you talk about where exactly these people could be targeted, well, these people could be targeted in all the verticals of an organization or in all the different sectors. To me, at this moment, what comes to my mind is the financial institutions, wherein there is a lot of repository of data. There's a lot of data analytics also which works across, but how many of them is actually worked in reality is a question mark. The second to my mind, the prime target from the one of the other vertical is the pharmaceutical sector, where you have a lot of molecules now being developed through which there are a lot of medicines are being prepared. We talk about the recent time about the COVID. You can just think about it is that if any single molecule is being modified or a change, what impact it can bring, what changes it could bring, and what an emergency-like situation could be created across. And the third sector for me, which are the prime sector in this vertical, which of course happens to be the government organizations. We talk about the government organizations, one of the weakest link as far as the cybersecurity space is concerned, because you feel that you have technology in place, you feel that you have got a process in place. But as I said just a few minutes before, but how many of these processes are theoretical and how many of these processes are actually put into use is the biggest question mark which has to be answered with. So for me, it's only people, people, and people. People drive the system, people drive the process. Majority of them are good, but a few percentage of them actually hamper the whole particular process and bring the system to a complete standstill.
Good. Nice input, Dr. De Costa. Now we'll understand from Mr. Mukherjee.
Yeah, thank you. So taking the cue from Mr. DeCosta, as he said, people is the target. So I will try to say, which will be more scary. So every one of us are a target. So the classification, severity, the implication can be different. Like as we are talking about that Facebook and WhatsApp data exchange, the implication of the same might be different, but as a contextually, every one of us a target. But if we talk about the nation's security and for the security of the country, national critical infrastructure, that can be one of the key aspects which should be in our focus. Because as you can understand, with the enforcement of digital adoption, digital transformation, everything is now connected. Nowadays, for doing a war, you need not to do through a missile. So since your power grids are connected using APDRP kind of a projects, your radar systems are connected. If something can be compromised there, if your telecom grid, everything is connected, VFSI, banks, everything is connected. If we can do some anomalies there and take control and certain amount of time, if we can make the system out of your periphery, so a lot of disaster can happen. So in that context, if you talk about country security, so definitely national critical infrastructure is most important, which includes power grid, which includes your telecom sector, includes your banking and financial sectors. But as a whole, all of us who are part of this digital transformation journey, we are targeted by the hackers.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's a really wonderful input, and I'm sure that many of our audience, they would love to listen and understand. I'd like to thank all the panelists for sharing their valuable input, starting from Sandeep Dasgupta, Dr. Karnika Seth, Anuj Agrawal, Dr. Harold De Costa, and Harnath Babu, and Sushil Mukherjee. And thank you, panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, panelists, for sharing your valuable inputs. It's always rightly said that prevention is better than cure. It's less expensive to prevent cyber attacks than to repair the damage dealt from the cyber attacks. Multiple organizations across industries lose a lot of money from cyber attacks all the time. Before moving on towards the most exciting session presented by the global leaders of the tech companies, there will be a live hacking session of the VPN, that's Virtual Private Networks. It is true that the spike in VPN usage was seen mainly in regards to the COVID-19 pandemic, pushing the work from home culture. Followed by the awards ceremony, there are 10 OEMs into security products and solutions to be recognized in this Cyber and Data Security Summit 2021. These awards are based on the feedback we have received from the end users in the survey we had recently conducted in the varindia.com portal.